Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, February 15th, 2007. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. Well, this week, Adam Avery of Avery Brewing in Boulder, Colorado, joins us to talk about collaboration, the concept, and the beer. Adam is releasing a collaborative beer with Vinnie Cilurzo of Russion River Brewing in Santa Rosa, California, and Adam gives us a peek behind the scenes of the brewing process. Well, I've got a little bad news and some good news. First, for fans of the International Mead Festival, I had hoped to have coverage from our man in Colorado, Brian Warren, but, sometimes real life gets in the way of things. So while we don't have sound from the festival itself, I'm hoping to be able to connect with one of the mead makers who attended sometime in the near future. The good news is that I'm heading to Kansas City this weekend to tour Boulevard Brewing Company and to get an interview there. Also, I've been invited to attend the 24th annual homebrew competition of the Kansas City Beermeisters, so I hope to have some interesting sound from that as well. Our buddy John Palmer is going to be the featured speaker for that competition. I received a good response from our interview this past episode on organic brewing with Amelia Slayton of Seven Bridges Cooperative. Some of you say you're going to give organic brewing a try after hearing our chat with Amelia. I hope that you drop me a line and let me know how it turns out for you. Also, Amelia wrote me a note with a clarification. She says, when I was talking about some farmers being granted an EPA exemption to spray certain chemicals, it's conceivable that some folks listening might have mistakenly thought that an exemption was being granted to organic farmers, which is certainly not the case. Organic farmers are never allowed to spray harmful chemicals on their crops and still be able to label the crop organic. And Amelia says she came up with a better answer to my question, why brew organic? According to Amelia, it's to make really good beer that you can feel really good about. Makes sense. I appreciate Amelia's help. Along those lines, Jerry from Oak Creek, Wisconsin writes, once again, I've got to put in a plug for Lakefront Brewery in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Jerry says, in addition to the gluten-free beer produced here, Lakefront also has been producing its version of an organic beer, Organic ESB. So, it sounds like Lakefront in Milwaukee is thinking out of the box a bit on more than one front. I appreciate that, Jerry. I received a bunch of email calling to my attention Bilk, the Japanese beer made out of milk. It's been all over the news lately, and I think we need to challenge our listeners in Japan to get some of this stuff, try it, and let us know what it's like. And as a bonus challenge, try to find out more information on how they make this stuff. I don't know. Beer milk doesn't sound very tasty to me, but I'll try anything just about once. You can make a cream stout with real cream, I guess. I don't know. Al from Poughkeepsie, New York, was the one who wrote a couple episodes ago that his homebrew store owner was discouraging the use of grain bags. Al writes back with an update. Al says, it was kind of surreal to hear my question read on the podcast last week. I was worried that I might be excommunicated from my local shop for questioning the tried and true methods. Well, we don't want that. Al says, I've been back to my local shop since asking the bag versus bagless question. In theory, when steeping with a bag, the grains at the center of the bag have a difficult time absorbing water. This issue is compounded when the amount of grain increases. Also, many folks use a wort bag as a grain bag, which allows too much grain debris into the wort. With bagless steeping, all the grain is in contact with the water during the steep. By straining the grains and repouring the tea through the grains, you serve to filter out any of the grain dust that may have made it into the kettle during your first pass. Al says this looks very close to what an all-grain brewer does during the mash and sparge. I used this method on a batch last week, and it was pretty easy. I'll let you know if there's any difference in the finished product. Just another way to skin the cat, I suppose. Well, thanks, Al. As I say, I'm always open to different ways of doing things, so I look forward to hearing how your brew comes out. I'm pretty happy with the results of using the grain bag and the ease of use in an extract brew. So it would have to be pretty dramatic in the difference of the flavor to get me to knock my old habit. But, I've got an open mind. I've got a few responses to the listeners who have written with olive off flavors in their beers. Casey, formerly of Siloam Springs, now in the UK, writes, I had a little bit of olive aroma in an oatmeal stout one time. I think in my case it was under pitching and slightly warmer than ideal fermentation temps, which gave the ester profile of a touch of olives. It was subtle enough not to be what I would call an off aroma, though not something I would shoot for on purpose either. And Casey says, for what it's worth, I was using White Lab's Dry English Ale, WL007, licensed to brew, I guess, which seems prone to some unusual ester formation at higher temps. Appreciate that, Casey. Always good to hear from Casey. John from Hiram, Ohio, writes, I brewed an olive-flavored Irish red ale a couple of years ago. I don't know what I did wrong, but in all my reading and listening, your February 8th podcast is the first time I've heard of anyone else brewing an olive-flavored beer. I couldn't fix my batch. I had to dump it out. It was undrinkable. Olive ale may be a good friend for Popeye, but it sucks to drink. I have to admit that I came very close to making a Popeye joke when I first heard the olive-flavored beer, but I steered away at the last minute. It's good to hear that there's at least one other listener out there with a twisted sense of humor like mine. I appreciate that, John. And I'm going to read a part of a note from Robert in Auburn Hills, Michigan. Robert says, I can't explain the olive flavor, but it could be a sanitization problem or perhaps yeast autolysis. I had a problem with sanitation about a year ago with every batch I made having an off taste. I'd been brewing for over a year using plastic buckets. Robert says it started shortly after switching from bleach to Star San. And as I said last time, this is me talking, that may be a red herring, so don't dump your Star San. I researched this problem online and in books and asked my fellow brewers in my homebrew club. Finally, I held a Trumbull light in the bucket and noticed deep scratches. I believe yeast and bacteria can live in these scratches. That's what I've heard as well, too. I was told to scrap the buckets and buy new ones, but I wanted to test my theory. I bleached the buckets and hoses. Bleach is a powerful cleaner and sanitizer because it has the ability to break down organic material, Robert says. Most sanitizers cannot break down organics and cannot penetrate where bleach can. Robert says, after bleaching the buckets, I thoroughly rinsed them with tap water. Because tap water is not sterile, I have well water, I re-sanitized with Star San and let it drip dry upside down. I've not had a sanitation problem since, and I never replaced the buckets. Well, thanks, Robert. Again, I don't think Star San is the problem here, so don't. Lots of people love Star San, so don't write me that I'm maligning Star San at all. It was mentioned in the original email and this one, but don't make a connection saying Star San gives you olive flavor. I don't think that at all. Robert goes on to mention in his email that a lot of brewers malign bleach, but he's had good luck with it. Now, coming up in the next few weeks, I'll have an interview with Merle Landman, a representative from National Chemicals. They are one of the manufacturers of iodophor, which is what I generally use. Merle has a lot of good information in that interview on using iodophor and on sanitization in general, so stay tuned for that. Norm from Ontario, Canada, writes, I heard your response to the question about lazy versus wicked boil and have to disagree with you. A vigorous boil merely means rolling. That is, the boil is enough to keep the hops and brake moving in the pot. You really don't want more than that. If you read George Fix's Principles of Brewing Science, he notes that evaporation rates of more than 12% per hour can produce unwanted vegetal flavors and other sharp burnt flavors, unwanted except in certain specialized brews. On the other hand, the rule of thumb is to have at least 7% evaporation rate to drive off DMS and isomerize the hops. As little as 2% is needed to get hot break. I found that a 10% evaporation rate is a rather lazy boil where the wort is gently in motion in the kettle. You don't want the wort jumping. Well, I don't know that we disagree, Norm. It's hard to get a picture of what a lazy or wicked boil is. In my mind, I pictured a lazy boil as something with very little movement. Not like hardly anything happening in there at all. And a wicked boil as something on the other end of the spectrum. One of those cauldrons you see at Yellowstone, where it's just like throwing steam and water everywhere. So I'll stick to my previous fence-standing position of saying the ideal is somewhere in between. you probably more toward the lazy side than the wicked side, but you do want some movement of the hops in there to get them working and all the stuff that needs to happen in the boil. So I appreciate the note, and it's interesting. I like you're having the figures in there of the evaporation rates to actually give us something to measure instead of just our interpretations of wicked and lazy. Now, on to our interview with Adam Avery of Avery Brewing. Adam is good friends with Vinnie Cilurzo of Russion River, and when they discovered they both had beers with the same name, Salvation, they decided to collaborate instead of litigate. And we talked to Adam to get the story behind the scenes. Well, Adam Avery, welcome again to Basic Brewing Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me again. I can't believe you're actually wanting to talk to me once again, but hopefully it'll be better than the last time, huh?
No, last time was good. We got good feedback from that. I think you've got a good energy. You're making great beers, and you're really you and Vinnie and Sam and all the first names of the brewing rock stars are out there making it happen in craft brewing. So it's a pleasure to talk to you.
I don't know about the rock star status, but it's fun to talk brewing with people who like to brew. So as far as those guys go, it's always fun hanging out with them. I don't think people realize how close knit our industry is, and especially the little niche of the extreme beer or whatever you want to call our niche of the industry is. But it's funny how well we all get along. Definitely no backstabbing or anything going like that. So it's pretty cool. It's like it's like a bunch of homebrewers getting together, just drinking beers and talking about how to make beer. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I did a couple of interviews with Maureen Ogle, who wrote a book on the American brew scene, the history of American brewing. And she was talking about the German brewers, and when they first started out making it big in the country, competition was really ruthless, and they did just about whatever they could to compete against each other. And you guys, this is not the kind of approach that you're taking.
Not at all. I mean, we always. I mean, we look at the pie. We're pretty smart guys. Well, I like to think that we're smart guys, but we look at a pie, and you're looking at American lager or lager styles, representing 90% of sales, or probably a little bit less. Then you've got imports with their 10% market share or so, and then we've got our measly 3.5%. And for us to bicker over the crumbs underneath Bud Miller and Coors tables is ridiculous. And so we realized that if we work together and hope to basically to get that tide rising, so all our boats can float a little bit higher, is the way to go. And we all have the same passion and drive, and so it only makes sense that we would become friends, because we're all so interested in the same thing, which is making unique, remarkable beers in a consistent fashion. And that's what we're all dedicated to. So it's no wonder that there's certain groups of people that kind of fall in together. And as far as working together goes, it's pretty easy. We all do our own fests, and we all ask each other for beers. And and obviously we do crazy things like go to Belgium together and those sorts of things. So as the industry evolves, so will the players, and hopefully we'll get to go out and play more and have a good time.
So without Anheuser-Busch and the other big guys, do you think that you would be as collaborative?
If Anheuser-Busch wanted me to do a collaborative brew with them, would I be into that? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm saying that you guys are collaborative. Kind of, you're David's united against the Goliaths.
Oh yeah. Oh, without a doubt. I mean, just think about it. Even if every percent that we take of the beer pie is monstrous volume, for everybody involved in the micro industry. So, when we have our, craft brewers conference, and like a Kim Jordan from New Belgium, her whole speech was about how do we get to 10% of the market, how do we get to 20% of the market instead of speaking on such small terms, how do we all work together? Small breweries like myself, big breweries like New Belgium or Sierra Nevada, how do we, tie all our energies together in order to, to take a bigger chunk of the market? And, not just to take a bigger chunk of the market so that, we can be, all rich and wildly successful, but I think it's more about the education of the American palate. And, because I think most of the people that are still in business today doing what we do are in it for the passion and for, the creation of, whatever you want to call it, art or science or, a combination of both. But we're really into, showing people what we think beer is supposed to be. And we think that people have been brainwashed for so long into thinking, to borrow Greg Cook from Stone Brewing Company's motto, yellow fizzy beer, that is what beer is. It's an educational process, and so it's really cool how a brewery like mine can really, reap the benefits of somebody like a New Belgium, because without New Belgium, without their Fat Tire or, without a Sam Adams Boston Lager, they're pulling, Bud, Miller, Coors drinkers into, our industry. And then some of those people are going to get a little bit more adventurous. Their taste buds are going to be like, hey, we want a little bit of something else. And then, that's where breweries like, Dogfish or Avery or Stone or Victory, that's where those guys come into play. That's where we come into play. So, yeah, hopefully we'll all continue to work together for the greater good, which is to educate people into understanding that, hey, beer should taste, very, very complex. It should have a bunch of different layers to it, and it shouldn't just be carbonated, yellow water, basically.
Now, what do you think of the efforts of the big breweries to start getting into the crafty-ish type beers?
Oh, I love it. I think it's great. I mean, the one thing that I know is that if people drink my beer, I really have a hard time believing that a very large percentage of those people are drinking Budweiser, Miller, or Coors products, if ever. But what I think what they're going to be doing is they're going to be taking people who are normally used to drinking Bud, Miller, Coors, and then they're going to start putting out products that are more like ours, and they're basically going to be teaching their consumer that, hey, this is what beer should taste like. And then, boom, that opens up a whole new world, for this beer drinker. And then, Avery Brewing Company is a part of that. And as you know, especially with homebrewers, is that people aren't super brewery loyal. They're basically industry loyal. They're loyal to a niche, that microbrewing niche. And so I'm not so worried about like trying to create, like Avery-driven drinkers. What we need to make sure is that people are looking for more flavor in their beer. And so what Bud is doing with all of their products is that's what they're doing. They're making a little bit bigger beers, something that's a little bit more aggressive. And I think it plays right into, our hands. Hopefully, Augie Bush isn't listening to this, but, and I have a feeling he's not, so I think we're safe.
You never know. There's maybe some junior member of their marketing team is listening to the beer podcasts out there and the homebrew podcast. Well, you were talking about collaboration, and that is the name of a beer that is coming out under your label.
Correct.
And we talked about it a bit when we were actually out there, out to your brewery. But give us the background again on this collaboration, Not Litigation Ale.
Okay, yeah, sure. Great, fun project that kind of speaks volumes to, where our industry is as far as, people coming together and helping each other instead of, worrying about, copyrights and stuff. So anyway, Vinnie Cilurzo of Russion River fame became a really good friend of mine, 6-7 years ago. And we soon realized that we, both had a Salvation beer in our lineup. So mine is it's a golden ale very hoppy, crisp, and very fruity flavor. His Salvation is more it's a dark strong ale, like a double-ish kind of beer, more malty. Anyway, we both realized that we had these beers in our lineups, and we were like, should we worry about who had the name first? Should one of us, give up the name rights? And we both were like, hell no, we like what each other's doing. We're like, let's just keep doing the way we're doing it, and you'll have your Salvation, I'll have my Salvation. Well, there was a little thing thrown in there. We should sometimes think about, doing a blend of the beers. So anyway, I think in April 2004, I finally went out and visited Vinnie and his wife Natalie at Russion River Brewing in Santa Rosa, California. Went to their brew pub, and immediately, obviously, had several pints of Pliny the Elder, which is one of my all-time favorite IPAs. I think probably some of the people out there have had it. Then we got to the task of blending these, his Salvation and my Salvation. I brought some bottles, and he pulled some out. So we came up with this really good blend of the two. And, so this was, almost 3 years ago. About 6 months ago, I opened my mouth to a reporter for, I believe it was a New Brewer magazine, and she wrote an article about the beer, which has never been made. So the article comes out, and I give Vinnie a call, and I said, Vinnie, did you see the article? And he's like, yeah. And I go, it sounds like we have to do this. Well, this is at a time when my growth rate's like 40%. His is like off the charts. And, we have, very little space for, brewing all this stuff. And we're just like, oh, man, how are we going to make this happen? Anyway, we clear some time at our brewery, some tank time for this little collaboration. Vinnie, for reasons, for like federal reasons about, how to blend beers and stuff, we thought it'd be easier to make all of the beer here at Avery Brewing Company, and then the taxes could be paid and all that sort of thing, and keep Uncle Sam happy. So Vinnie flew out here and brewed his beer here at the brewery. We brought in, he sent us his recipe, and it was like all these malts that we don't use. So we had to go and bring in all these specialty malts and his yeast strain. And so he brewed his beer, we brewed mine, and we did a blending in December, and then we packaged in January of this year. So it is out on the market, and I'm pretty sure the beer for Northwest Arkansas is on the way, too.
And, that's the most important part of the conversation for me.
Well, I knew that was going to be the next question. Probably, right? It's really, and, I got to say that it's one of the best beers I think that we've ever made here. And Vinnie, I just shipped him a pallet of beer so that he could have it at his brew pub, and he said the same thing. We're really amazed at how well it turned out. And the cool thing about it is that while you can pick up hints of my Salvation and hints of his Salvation, the blend of the two is a completely different, beer. I mean, it's wonderful how both beers married together and created something different. And not only different, but Vinnie and I both agree that it is a better beer than either one of the Salvations. The complexity is unbelievable. The drinkability at 9% is unreal. It's a great beer. And we only made one batch, and we made 700 cases or something. So it's not a big marketing ploy, but and we're not going to make a lot of money off of it. But the money that we do make off of it, we are going to take Sam from Dogfish, Rob Todd from Allagash, and Tommy Arthur from Port Brewing. We're all going to go back to Belgium off of the profits under the guise of a return educational trip. And so it's just a chance for all us guys to get back together like we did last year at this time when we went to Belgium. So it's going to be pretty fun.
So it's all for the betterment of brewing.
Well, truly it is. I mean, because we found out a lot of stuff while we were over in Belgium about their traditional brewing techniques, and and I think we can definitely apply some of them here. I mean, they're definitely, I don't agree with all of them, but definitely opened my eyes to how they do things, spontaneous fermentation and that sort of thing, and how they do their barrel aging. Highly educational trip and things, and definitely things that we've incorporated here into the brewery on a small scale. Nothing that's gone out, but. It was definitely a great trip.
Now talk about the similarities. His is more of a double, and yours is more of a golden.
Yep.
Talk about the similarities. They're both Belgians, so they come sort of from the same family. But talk about the similarities in the flavors and some of the contrasts and how they did come together.
Well, I mean, for me, obviously they're Belgian, so a lot of people say, well, it's pretty similar, but I think they're really pretty dissimilar beers. His yeast strain is like got maybe a mustier, more I don't know how else to say, like a yeastier note, more traditional Belgian flavors. Ours is a Belgian yeast strain as well, but it throws off a lot of fruity, like apricot-y kind of flavors, and some spicy phenols as well. So the yeast strains are, really different. His malt bill is completely different than, what ours is. I mean, our malt bill is very simple, and his is, quite complex as far as the dark malts go. And, he has very little hops in his, while ours is, we use as much hops in our kettle as we do with our IPA.
Wow.
So it's, our Salvation is a very hop-driven, spicy beer, and his is, definitely is more reliant on those weird specialty malts that he puts in there, and gives it that really, Merid Suish 8 style, pretty thick, robust, almost chocolatey kind of malt flavors.
Wow. So was it a 50-50 mix or what?
No, it's not a 50-50. It's close to that, but we're going to keep that secret for a while.
Okay. So get a bottle of each at home and play with it and see if you.
It's funny, people are doing it too. We people on Rate Beer, we see some cool rates on there, and then people call us and they're asking us questions about it, and we're like, you tell us. That's what I want to know. I want to see what. People who are going to drink this beer are going to be home brewers or, beer geeks extraordinaire, just like I am, people who know beer. So I don't want to give it all away. I want to see what people think, because I think it's going to be hard for people to tell, what is that blend. And I think a lot of people are going to have trouble realizing that if you took a bottle of our Salvation and a bottle of his, and you drank each of them, and then you drank the collaboration, you'd wonder how it came to collaboration, because it really isn't just A plus B equals C. There's definitely something else that happened in there, and that's the weird side of our business, is who knows how those flavors are going to marry up once you put them together.
As Charlie Papazian says, you're getting a little woo-wooey.
Mm-hmm. We woo-wooed on this one, yeah.
Well, as you mentioned, we're the beer geek factor. We are beer geeks, so I can't let you go too much further without peeling back the covers a little bit and showing, telling us what went on in the brew session. You say that Vinnie has a different approach with his grain bill. Tell us as much as you can what went into these beers.
Well, I don't feel it's my place to talk about, Vinnie's recipe. I'm pretty open with most people about my recipes, but I'm not sure how he is with his. I would just say that we brought in, 6 malts that we had never used before in our brewery. So it was fun to mash in with those and to taste those different malts. And we're actually going to incorporate at least a couple of those into our anniversary beer this year. So it's definitely a cool learning experience for Avery Brewing Company, having Vinnie come in and and see how he brews his beer. And then obviously the Salvation for us was that was easy because we've been making that beer for 6 years or something. So nothing crazy going on there. I mean I can share our Salvation recipe, but hopefully you understand that. Yeah,
I completely understand.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about yours.
Well, I mean, Salvation is pretty. I think it's fairly easy beer to make. The malt bill is relatively simple. A couple of light specialty grains. Some Cara 45, some Cara 15. Obviously lots of 2-row. We use some light Belgian candy sugar and some turbinado sugar as well to get our gravity to where we want it. And then we have we don't have a lot of IBUs on that beer. We have I think 23 IBUs, which isn't a lot. It's kind of high for a Belgian beer, but not a lot. But the cool thing about the Salvation is that we the yeast strain that we use, which is 3787, that's what we use in Reverend as well. It's the Westmalle yeast strain. If you ferment it at pretty high temperatures, you get a lot of great fruity esters, and that's what I really like about Salvation is that I really get a lot of apricot and peach on the nose, along with some cinnamon as well. So you got some spicy phenols going on there. But the really cool thing about Salvation, like I had said before, was that we hop the living shit out of it. As far as a Belgian beer goes, we use well over a pound per barrel in the kettle to finish off. So it's not a dry hopped beer per se, but at the end of boil, we're dropping massive amounts of Styrian Goldings into the brew, and so you do get a big hop nose off of it. So
you're using lots of hops, but not getting a lot of IBUs at that point.
No, I mean most of the first editions are Styrian Goldings as well, so it's a low alpha rating. So we're only building about 23 IBUs, and then that last edition, we're still getting some IBUs obviously because you got some heat in there, so you're getting some conversion. But we've got it calculated out at 23 IBUs, and super hoppy. But the thing is that as homebrewers know, it's like if you have a very if you have a yeast strain that doesn't contribute a lot of flavor to a beer or nose, that amount of hops would be like, ooh, IPA. But because this yeast strain, 3787, is throwing off so much aromatics as well, there's really a battle between, those esters and phenols and the final hop addition. So it may not seem as hoppy as the amount that we're using, but, in order to taste that amount of hops, we have to use that amount of hops because of, what we're doing as far as, higher fermentation temperatures and things to really accelerate the ester development.
And when we were out there, you were talking about starting off at fairly low fermentation temperatures, and then once you get going, just let nature take its course. Yeah,
I mean, what we found with anything high gravity, meaning 8% up to whatever 18%, whatever we've done, is that if we can start off at a lower temperature, we typically have a lower fusel alcohol development, and the yeast strain itself is a little bit healthier. A lot of people think that trying to get fermentation over with fast is a good idea, which is probably a good idea with lower strength beers, and it's fine. But when you start doing super high gravity beers, if you're stressing your yeast cells where you have a small amount of yeast, taking in a lot of sugar and producing a lot of alcohol, a lot of times they can't expel the alcohol as fast as they're producing it. So they're basically killing themselves off. So if you reduce that temperature in the beginning, you're making fermentation last a lot longer, but these yeast cells are able to, expel the alcohol out of their cells a lot easier. And it keeps them healthier for a longer period of time, which kind of goes against, what a lot of people would say, which is, well, then they're living in an alcohol environment for a longer period of time, and you're asking them to live longer and to produce more alcohol later on. But that's a lot better than to be, basically, having the toxins inside the cell. It's a lot better to have those toxins on the outside of the cell because, there's other things you can do as far as feeding the yeast and things, to keep them healthy throughout that, that term of fermentation. So, so we'll start fermentation for the first 2 days at about 66 degrees on Salvation, and then we'll let the temperature come all the way up. And usually by the end of fermentation, we're in like mid to high 70s.
So still not way high.
No.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of discussion and seen a lot of discussion from home brewers who say, I like to do Belgians in the summer because, I like to ferment, in the 80s for my Belgians. Yeah,
I mean, I think it definitely works. I mean, we go up to 80 degrees, like on our Karma, which is our Belgian Pale Ale, which is, our 5% summer seasonal. And we get that. We use a Rochefort yeast strain for that, and it really develops this really cool fruitiness to it at higher temperatures. So, yeah, we're all over the board. And on some of our monster beers, like Mephistopheles and the Beast, at the end of fermentation, it could be in the mid 80s by the time we're done.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what about on your Salvation? What about the mash temps? You do a single infusion mash, right?
Yeah, and we're right in that like 150 to 152 area. We're trying to ferment as much as we can out of it. We want a pretty bone dry kind of flavored beer. We're trying to take away any kind of residual sweetness. Obviously, there's going to be some sweetness in the beer, but we want to get it to be a really drinkable, dry golden ale. more sessionable, than something that you would just want to, have as a sipper.
So does Vinnie have a similar philosophy on mash temps on his Salvation as well?
On Vinnie's, yeah, because his actually finishes about the same gravity as well. So we're at the same mash point, about 150, 151.
Wow. Well, it's I'm looking forward to tasting it.
I've been drinking a lot of it. I mean, to be honest with you, it's way better than I would have thought it would have been. I mean, we did that blending, way back in 2004, and we were all like, "Oh, this is really good. This is great." But something else happened here at the brewery, and it just came together so nicely. It's really good.
Well, while I've got you on the phone, I told you I was going to ask you about this.
Okay.
One of my standard beers when I go to the liquor store is to pick up a White Rascal, which is a Belgian wit beer, right?
Yep.
And so, I've got to ask you, what's behind the White Rascal?
Well, I love Belgian beers, and we make a lot of super high alcohol Belgian beers. And a few years ago, I decided we needed to make a wit. I mean, I'm a big Hoegaarden fan, and I just like the style. It's just such a fun beer to sit down and drink a bunch of, and it's a light beer, but it's got so much flavor. It's a great beer for, beer geeks love the style, and then I've also got people who say they don't like beer, and you're like, well, I don't think they're going to like this because it's got coriander and orange peel in it, and they end up loving it, and it's a ton of flavor, just not a ton of body, and it's a style that I like. So when we went after it, when I decided to make one, obviously I was going to do it the way that I do most beers, which is to be a little bit on the big side for the style, and so we definitely use more coriander, more orange peel than I would say that most wits have. So it's spicier, lots more citrus floating around in it. Mash bill is pretty simple. Most wits are 50-50 or someplace in that between two-row and malted wheat. We use Dingemann's malted wheat. We really like that. So and then our two-row is our base two-row that we use for all of our beers. We use we use the Hoegaarden yeast strain. I don't have the number in front of me. Sorry for not having that, but I could come up with that.
A Google search would probably.
Yeah, and I definitely recommend using it. We ferment that at about from day one at 72 degrees, and the one thing you'll find is that it doesn't want to flock. The yeast doesn't want to flock very much, so you may have a little extra time in secondary trying to get it to clear up, or at least clear up to where you want it to be. Like for a wit beer, we try to get to about 8 million cells per milliliter in a bottle or less, just so there's a good dusting of the yeast at the bottom. So when you do the little swirl at the end, you get that real nice cloud effect.
So if you theoretically wanted to harvest the yeast strain, you could get a White Rascal and try that.
Oh yeah, for sure. If you could pipette the bottom of a bottle, I would chill it, take it home, chill it, and then and grow that up. I definitely think you could get some good results, especially if the beer were on the fresh side. But we use Sterling hops for bittering, and we use Czech Saz and Sterling combination for the end of boil. Obviously, it's not a hop-driven beer. I mean, it's one of our least hoppiest beers that we make. The aroma is definitely dominated by the yeast strain and by the coriander and the orange peel. So we grind our own coriander here. So we buy it in bulk, and we have a special grinder that's set aside just for that because it's a really pungent seed. And then we use a blend of two different kinds of orange peels on it. We use Curacao orange peel, which is the traditional. It's more of a bitter orange peel, and then we also use a sweet orange peel as well in there. And what we did was we constructed I guess you could just call it like a T-ball. I mean, it's this huge I don't know, it's probably like 3 feet around, and it's built out of stainless steel. It's got stainless steel meshing around it, and then the top is bolted on. Pull that off, throw all the coriander, all the orange peel in it, and then we have a pulley system rigged up above our kettle that we can drop that into the kettle once the boil is done. We shut our boil off when we're starting to whirlpool the hops out. Then we'll set this T-ball in there, and we'll let it steep in there for 30 minutes, and then we'll run off into our fermenter from there.
Oh, wow. So it's at the end of the boil where the spices and the orange peel comes in.
Yep. That's plenty enough because, I mean, with those flavors, the coriander and the orange peel, I think if you boiled them, you would drive all of the flavor off. Your orange peel is basically an oil, so just like with hops, if you boil it, you're going to drive off the aromatics, right, and create bitterness. And, the same could be true about, orange oil. I don't know if there's any kind of, bittering in it if you would boil it, but we just make it like tea, and that way we know that we have we can maximize the aromatics and the flavor right there in the kettle, in that 30 minutes.
And one thing that I like about the beer is the mouthfeel. It's creamy, without being too heavy. It's a great summer beer because it's so, relatively light in gravity. Compared to some of your other beers.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's like 5.5%, and that is our lowest finishing gravity beer. Finishes at 10:08, I believe. Starts at 10:48, and so yeah, it's definitely our quote lightest, in body beer for sure, but not in flavor by any means.
No.
I think there's tons of flavor there, and I think we hit just the right amount of yeast in suspension so that you do get that nice, kind of creamy, full mouthfeel.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful beer.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
And we look forward to. Is there any other beer that you're working on that's coming up? You said an anniversary ale was coming up.
Well, yeah. I just decided actually a couple of weeks ago, or actually just last week, what our anniversary beer will be. So it's called 14. So we've had 10, 11, 12, 13, and so 14 is going to be the description is going to be a different, dark, dry hopped ale. And for lack of better description, it will be a super rich Belgian double that we are going to dry hop the crap out of.
Mm.
And so it's going to be, I don't know how you would describe it, but it's a beer that I've been wanting to make for a long time because I really enjoy the malt flavors of a really good double. But I really wanted to see, we're going to use tons of East Kent Goldings. We just got in on the fresh last year's harvest of the EKGs. And so it's not going to be super hoppy like our Maharaja is going to be, piney and grapefruity and stuff, but it's going to be in that real traditional English sense. But we're going to use a ton of dry hops. So I'm excited about this beer. I think, and it's going to be probably in the 9% category, so it's not going to be super alcoholic, but it's definitely going to have legs so that, it can be, laid down. And we are going to, and it's going to be unfiltered. So, everything will stay in the bottle. So, huge experiment. And I think it's one that, like I said, I've been dying to make a beer like this for a while. So here we go. It's going to be number 14. It'll be available. We're shooting for May 1st as a release date.
But is there a better job in the world than what you've got?
I wish I was a professional basketball player, but that didn't really pan out. So I'm going to take, second place would be to own a brewery and to be able to have a homebrew system that just happens to be a 40-barrel homebrew system with 240-barrel carboys, and I can brew whatever I want as long as I can get my distributors to and my fans to sign on to buy enough to keep us in business, which is what it's all about. It's a fine line between the beers that I want to make and the beers that I think can actually sell. So some people think that I go over that line some days, but so far so good. Things are working out.
Well, I know you're busy, and I certainly appreciate your time.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me, and good brewing to everybody out there. And again, if anybody's going to be making some clones of these beers and they feel like sending a sample out to me, I'd gladly give her a taste for you.
All right. Thanks, Adam.
All right.
Well, it's fun to talk to Adam. I'm still looking forward to finding and trying Collaboration, Not Litigation Ale. And sounds like an excuse for a get-together. Next week, I hope to have some sound from Kansas City. It may just be the sound of me celebrating getting off the shingles medication that's been keeping me away from homebrew for the past couple of weeks. I don't know. But hopefully there'll be some useful stuff coming out of there. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com. Or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. And while you're on our site, you can check out our online shop, where you can find great pricing on our DVDs and a combo deal to save you even more. In Basic Brewing Introduction to Extract Home Brewing, we walk you through the extract brewing process step by step, from boiling to bottling, all points in between. And in Basic Brewing Stepping into All Grain, we take you through the all grain process, from milling your grain to collecting your wort. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com, and if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order it online from us, and we'll send it to you ourselves, actually myself. Also, be sure to look for our new Brewer's Logbook. As of this recording time, I have 3 copies left. So, maybe sold out by the time you get to it. I don't know. I appreciate everybody who's picked one of those up. And appreciate all the comments I'm getting back, too. And thanks to everybody who's continuing to click on our Amazon.com link, despite my, having fun with things that are bought. We appreciate your support. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Rich Dad, Poor Dad, What the Rich Teach Their Kids About Money That the Poor and Middle Class Do Not, and the Fellows DS1 Fashion Shredder with Step Can. Thanks again, everybody, for doing that. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries about, me making fun of you personally. And a note to the listener who purchased the Bluetooth-enabled GPS system. Trevor in Reading, Pennsylvania, says thieves in England are using cell phones to detect those things, and then they break into the cars and steal them. So, check your Bluetooth settings on your GPS thingy, or turn it off when you're not using it. You're parked somewhere. I don't know. Something else to worry about, I guess. And you're welcome for that for that extra worry. That's all until next week. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio, and our website is provided by our buddy Kelly Dodson in Austin, who did our logo as well. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.